The EIDL grant applicants of 2020 are finally getting paid the remainder of their $10,000 EIDL grant. It started with low-income based community EIDL grant applicants, they're getting paid, and now non-low-income based applicants from 2020 are getting paid the remainder of their $10,000 EIDL grant. Meantime, next up are the 2021 applicants and then the new applicants under third stimulus. Third stimulus has EIDL grant in it. So how do you get it? What are the questions? What are the answers? Enjoy this overnight's throwback video explaining EIDL grant and the EIDL loan. It's the same application. You have to understand how to apply for it and get approved. Also understand how to get the EIDL loan starting today. You don't have to wait around. Go to sba.gov and you can apply for it right away today. Enjoy this overnight's LA video on the EIDL grant and the EIDL loan. EIDL loans heat up, but how quickly can you get one, and are processing times better than ever before? Hey, good evening, everybody. This is LA Late with Evenings LA Late, our 1 hour programming block every night that starts at 6:45 p.m. that starts with a check and continues to the loan. This is EIDL loan, which you may consider, and I talked about it in the other videos today, you may consider it if you have a Schedule C on your individual tax return as a side business that you do, whether you are an Uber or Lyft driver or you're a dog groomer, anything that appears as a Schedule C on your individual tax return. Now, of course, if you're also a business and you have an EIN and a business tax return every year, then you may apply. A lot of people are now coming in the mix who have never applied for an EIDL loan and have found this channel, which is really getting a second wind of new applicants for EIDL. This video tonight, however, is going to go over a different subject matter, which I went over when was it? 2 months ago? A month ago? Which is multiple applications. A lot of people don't realize that if they are engaged in different businesses, they can have different loans. It's not something explained to anyone. There's no pamphlet out there, and it's not inherently coherent. And so I'm here to help you understand how it works. First, there are two types of scenarios in which you can get multiple loans. The first one is where you actually own different businesses. The second one is where you own a business and you also do something as a Schedule C person. Let me talk about the first example. The first example I used to always use as you own a chain of restaurants, with a business name, a business EIN, and its own tax filings every year. And then you separately own a chain of shoe stores. Same situation, its own EIN, its own operations, and its own tax return. Each business separately can apply for their own EIDL loan. It's simple as that. Now, a lot of people, believe it or not, a lot of business owners own a lot of different businesses. And a lot of those businesses sometimes are very similar and somehow relatable. That doesn't prevent you from applying for an EIDL loan. Here's an example. You may have a business, and when I say business, it is legally a business. It has its own tax return, it has its own EIN. You may have a business that owns a restaurant. Then you may have a business that owns a soup manufacturing operation that delivers the wonderful soup you sell in the restaurant to wholesalers. Then you may have a separate business that runs a bakery operation that also sells the bread that you put in the restaurant. And they're totally separate, different tax return, different EINs. All three can apply for an EIDL loan. That is the way that they set it up. It's totally lawful, and that's the way they intended to operate. And the way that you apply is the way you apply with everything else. Its own EIN, its own business name, its own financials. Pretty simple. Now, the other example, the second one that I led with, is the most common example that I've seen on this channel, and I've seen a lot of people get approved. I've seen a lot of people go through the process, and it's very, very straightforward. The situation is the following. One, you own a business, and two, you're also an Uber Lyft driver, which is a W-2. Or another example is you own a business and you also do Airbnb for your apartment. Those are examples in which you have a Schedule C operation that's separate and apart from your business. So how do you do this one? Well, the business, of course, applies for its business as EIN and its business operations and its business financials. The Schedule C is you and your name and your social security number and your business financials that appear on your Schedule C. Now remember, it's tracking your Schedule C, and it's tracking that Schedule C. So a lot of viewers may have multiple Schedule Cs. For example, you may be an Uber Lyft driver, you may be a Postmates, and you may also be an Airbnb. If you're doing your tax returns correctly, they should not all be on the same Schedule C. They're all different Schedule Cs. Uber and Lyft is not the same as Airbnb. It's a different Schedule C. So but here's, I'm going to get to this example as well. Can you apply for a different loan for the Airbnb than for the Uber and Lyft? No. This is what's a little strange. So you can only apply for one loan for the business and one loan for you personally. But when you do it you personally, it's tracking the Schedule C. Now, if you have multiple Schedule Cs, you're ultimately going to have to choose the Schedule C that you think wants the loan, and that tees up the financials. Let me give you an example. Let's say you do Uber and Lyft, you made $80,000 last year, but you also did Airbnb and made $2,000 last year. Well, obviously, you're going to apply for the Uber and Lyft loan if that's what you need, and you're going to list $80,000. You're not going to add in there the Airbnb money because it has nothing to do with Uber and Lyft. This is hyper-technical. Yeah, you see where I'm going. But it's not very confusing. Now, when you apply for your loan, there are two different things that you click. When you're doing businesses, you click the button on the first page of the Streamline application that says 500 employees or less. A business with 500 employees or less. When you're doing it for yourself, then you click the button independent, self-employed, independent contractor. That's you. Next, when you go to the page that talks about identification number, if it's you, it's your social security number. If it's the business EIN. Next, a lot of viewers say, but they pulled my credit for the business. Yeah, they're just going to pull everyone's credit. I mean, they'll pull your sister's credit if they could. I mean, they literally will pull everything of credit that they want to pull. It's as simple as that. Next, a lot of people who have multiple businesses with similar names often get a high, you have multiple applications on file. Don't worry about that. I also had one viewer overnight who did not have similar business names, but they thought that it was the same application twice. Don't worry about it. You're going to have to reach out to SBA. You're going to have them fix it, but don't worry about it. Next, when you're doing the calculations and you're trying to figure out how much money can I get for a loan, LLA, because I watched your stimulus video. I'm like, I think I want that EIDL loan. How much money can I get? Well, if you're an individual, look at your Schedule C and look at line 1 or 1C, and then look at line 2. Line 1 is the revenue you had for Schedule C last year. Line 2 is your cost of goods sold. So you take revenue minus cost of goods sold divided by 2. That's the amount that they'll grant you a loan for. That's their calculation. Now, they do digress from it. They loan sometimes more and sometimes less, but that's their published calculation. I'm sure there's someone watching this video say, I want one of those loans, but I don't have a Schedule C. I just do things. God bless you, you do things. For purposes of SBA, that's not sufficient that you do things. So there are people who just do things like babysit people on the side or mow people's lawn or, paint people's front porches and get some checks here and there. And yeah, maybe the checks are good. Maybe at the end of the year you got about $3,000 in checks, but you didn't report as a Schedule C. Naughty, naughty. This is why the SBA doesn't want to hear from you. You have to have reported the business as on your Schedule C. What's going to happen if you don't have verifiable business? They're going to deny the loan because they say we can't verify that this business ever existed. You're just, you're just saying you had a business and trying to embellish it for the purposes of giving a loan from SBA. You can't do that. But if you actually have a Schedule C, it's in your tax return, then you can file. I had one viewer overnight who understood how SBA's loans worked and understood the calculation of the loans and understood the more revenue you have, the more loans you can get, and understood he was doing really bonanza business in January before the pandemic. Well, you know what he did? I don't think he was a viewer early on this channel because I would have pulled out that whip and said, what are you doing? He did not really follow the advice of this channel, which at that time was, as of April, I said, get your tax return on file. Get your 2019 tax return on file because SBA is going to go after follow your 2019 tax return financials. The person didn't, and so he went off of his 2018 tax return financials for a new business, which was still growing, that was apparently very small in 2018. Well, guess what? Earth to Mars. Hello, Captain Obvious is walking through the set. They gave him a very small loan because his operations were so small in 2018. Of course, he went bonkers and had enormous revenue in early 2019 before the pandemic and could have gotten 2019, his revenue went through the roof all the way into spring 2020. He could have gotten an enormous loan had he done his 2019 tax return because his 2019 tax return now shows six-figure, almost seven-figure revenue. I'm like, what are you doing? You wanted a loan, you had enormous revenue. Why don't you spend 15 minutes to get that tax return done, put it on file the tax return, and then say, hey, SBA, here I am. I had a great 2019. Give me a big Greek loan. My big Greek loan. That's that new movie coming with a lot of dancing and ABBA music. I don't know. I never saw that movie. So he could have gotten my big Greek loan movie, and he didn't. He got the tiny little Steve Mnuchin miniature 2018 loan. So it's like, whoa, SBA works off of financials, and so that's how you go. Finally, if you're sort of new to this channel, you're thinking about the loan, I've sparked your interest, you're like, I think I want that. I think I qualify for it. I need it. I want a lot of money. I think I qualify it. Then you need one last step. You need to go to Experian and learn your Vantage 3.0 score. Now, I'm going to say one thing clearly, and you know where I'm going. Experian is the only lending tracking credit score that SBA uses, and they only use Vantage 3.0. There are some people who are going to be lazy, who are going to say, I only find 4.0, I only find FICO, I only find TransUnion. They only use 3.0. Moreover, downloading the app might be the easiest way for some of you because apparently some of you are having problems with telephones. That telephone is a very modern technology. I just still have not gotten used to the telephone ever since, Mr. Bell came out with it. I'm calling him up on the phone. He's not answering, so I'm trying to figure out how to use the telephone. Yeah, since when did apps become easier than a telephone? But apparently some of you are getting the Experian Vantage 3.0 score quickly with the app. You use the boost by calling them up, 20-point score, bam, it raises your score. It's all free. Finally, if you've gone through all this and you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. I like this. Damn, okay. Then you might want to jump in the private. It's in the description of this video. The private is a place in which there are two mentors who answer your questions in processing the EIDL loan if you need help. They'll also answer your other questions. Please support them for their time if they're successful. And then I personally am only able to help certain types of EIDL loan situations, basically when you have a loan offer and you've accepted and it's now stuck. I'm really only doing those at the moment due to time schedules. So go into the private and you'll get some assistance. There's a great community, about 800 people that are helping one another as well. And a lot of people just get loans done by using the videos that are on this channel and by using the guidance of the private. There have been 3 success stories overnight, and 2 of them, when I mean success stories, I mean people who got loans approved that were locked, that were going to the funeral home down the street from Mitch's home, and they were literally dead processing applications. These are 3 people who got their loans approved today. 2 of them did them by their own self-help, by using the private and hustling themselves. And congratulations to them. As always, stay motivated, stay positive, stay focused, and join me tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. for Mornings LA Late.